Ole Miss is 3 things away from maximizing this transfer portal cycle. I will tell you exactly what I mean.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday morning. About 48 hours to go. We'll get through it together. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now it's the #1 sports podcast network in the entire country. That's all thanks to you. On today's show, we are going to be talking about the 3 positions that Ole Miss needs to fill in the transfer portal if they want to make a run in 2026. We are in the good fortune portion of the broadcast, and this is how Ole Miss will maximize that. Let's all assume that Trinidad is going to get his waiver, and at this point, Ole Miss should be a top 5 team if he does. How does Ole Miss maximize that over the next few weeks and put the team in the best position to win? They're doing everything they can, although people that don't want Ole Miss to succeed are doing things to make sure that Ole Miss doesn't succeed, apparently. But these 3 spots will be absolutely key. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers, you know who you are, who make the show what it is, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so we have about 48 hours or so until the end of the transfer portal cycle, the transfer portal window, all of that, whatever you want to call it. And we're there. Once you get to Saturday, it's all the retention is in the books. And then all of you're worrying about is acquisition. And right now is where everything could go sideways, and everybody's heard all of the rumors and things that are going on, especially about TJ Daugherty and Caden Lee. And even with all of that going on, Ole Miss needs 3 positions to maximize this roster. Again, let's all assume that Trinidad Chambliss gets his waiver. If he gets his waiver, he's the best college quarterback next year. He's the favorite for the Heisman Trophy, and Ole Miss is a preseason top 5 team right now, as we sit at the moment. But there's 3 positions that Ole Miss need to hit, and if they hit them, they will maximize this to the point where national championship, all of that becomes a legit question, a legit possibility. John David Baker at quarterback with Trinidad Chambliss and Deuce Knight and A.J. Maddox and then Walker Howard, all 4 of them, that room is taken care of. At running back, you have Kewan Lacy, you have J.T. Lindsey, you have Shakai Mills-Knight, you have Demarius Yates. That room's taken care of. Those 2 positions are in better shape than they've been maybe ever at Ole Miss. So where Ole Miss needs to kind of take advantage of in the coming weeks, remember, with Ole Miss's drop-add date, their drop-dead drop-add date, about February 1st, February 2nd, traditionally, Ole Miss has a longer time to recruit people for the semester than other places. There are other colleges and universities that are already in school. They've already started what's going on. Ole Miss is still about a week away from kicking off the spring semester in college. Ole Miss brought in Walker Howard back from the University of Louisiana. He's going to be the 4th string quarterback. He's going to be the big brother in the room. And if for some reason, and we all know that weird luck can happen, that Trinidad Chambliss does not get a favorable ruling, you have somebody that knows the offense to tell that to Deuce Knight, because at that point, Deuce Knight's going to be the dude. So that is what is going on at Ole Miss right now. Now, the 3 positions that I think Ole Miss needs to take care of, and we'll drill down on them in the 2nd and 3rd segment of today's show, okay? So we're going to get into it, so we're not going to rush through it. But offensive line, specifically offensive tackle, not so much the interior of the offensive line, but the offensive tackle, which is a money position. Ole Miss is going to have to pay for that position. I think Ole Miss also needs to get at least one or two wide receivers. Now, this isn't the era of Lane Kiffin being in charge of the Ole Miss program where every single year you recruited like 8 guys to play wide receiver, and you only took like 2 or 3 of them that played. The rest is just wasted money. I do not think that Ole Miss is going to do that this year. But Ole Miss does need a wide receiver or 2 in this transfer portal cycle, especially if, for some reason, Caden Lee decides to skedaddle. And linebacker. Linebacker, the secondary has been taken care of beautifully this transfer portal cycle. The defensive line is in very, very good shape right now. The question would be the linebackers. And if you can get a guy to be the Chance Campbell of that unit, to be the alpha dog of that unit, the person that is going to be responsible for setting everybody up, that is going to be the key in this transfer portal cycle. And I will talk about some positions, what we're looking for, all of that stuff coming up in the second and third segment. But the importance of the realization of where Ole Miss sits right now should not fall on deaf ears, okay? We're going to take the next couple of minutes and talk about retention and where they are. Trinidad Chambliss, he has a contract waiting for him if his ruling goes in his favor at about $6 million, somewhere in that ballpark, plus or minus a couple $100,000. $6 million for a quarterback. That's free spending. If this was in the open market and it wasn't retention, Ole Miss would be getting all sorts of flowers for making that signing. Kewan Lacy is making a ton of money. He is somebody that if Ole Miss brought him in, it would be completely celebrated. And a lot of the re-signings, William Eccles, who we've talked about, having the potential for a Walter Nolan type contribution moving forward. Cam Franklin, the same thing. He could essentially be Jared Ivey moving forward as this 2026 version of the defense starts to look a little bit more like 2024 than 2025. The retention aspect of what is going on of a team that was in the national semifinals 19 seconds away from the national title game. There's good players on this team all over the field. Offensive line, wide receiver, everything. There are good players. And when you look specifically at these need positions that Ole Miss has, it's about finding an alpha dog for that room. It's not about building the room. So don't take that the wrong way. Let's say Caden Lee goes to Georgia, for instance. I don't know anything, but let's say he does. And you're looking at it. Ole Miss is in position with what they already have. They have a Caleb Cunningham. They have Trayvon Ray. They have Deuce Alexander. They will make a very good wide receiver room, period. Remember Dylan Alfred. That's a name that we talked about during all of fall camp. Didn't play very much during the season, but he is available for the spring and in the fall. Caleb Cunningham's going to go through his first spring. The wide receivers that are on campus, very, very good. We talked about the group that signed last year, and I get that one person hit the transfer portal, but Caleb Cunningham, former 5-star, still here. Samari Reed, former All-State player in the state of Florida, still here. Dylan Alford, who was originally from Goshen, Mississippi, went over to Mobile and played and starred, still here. The wide receiver room without additions would be fine. But with additions, and one specific addition that we're going to talk about, they could be really fine. You know, wide receiver is suddenly the position of concern amongst Ole Miss fans right now, even after signing what feels like 9 per year recently. So what is the answer to that group? We will talk about all of that next. You know, there's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, well, that used to be the frustrating part with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That is why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I love being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so I know exactly what I'm getting into. Seeing college football tickets that start as low as $25 normally. Now, national championship, we're going to consider that as going to be expensive, but it's pretty cool to see the lower price tickets, especially as kickoff grows near. Knowing that all the prices include fees up front, make the whole process stretch free, and you can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That is Locked On College. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Hey, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast and network in America. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonolemiss.supercast.com or check the link down in the show notes below. All right, so we're waiting on a name to pop that would be a pretty big get in the transfer portal window. Now, this has been a name that we've been waiting to pop for a couple of days, honestly, and it hasn't happened quite yet. So weirdness can happen in the transfer portal. It always does. But if Ole Miss gets this guy, he is going to be wearing the #1 jersey for Ole Miss next year. He will be the guy, the dude, the one that everybody looks at next season will be Darrell Gill Jr. if he signs. Now, right now, he's already visited Ole Miss. Ole Miss is trending for his signature. Crystal balls are coming in for Ole Miss. But, and I say but, Ohio State has come into his recruitment. That should make everybody nervous about what was going on. And I think Oregon is popping in as well to go along with Washington. 3 Big Ten schools and Ole Miss for the wide receiver from Syracuse. Listen, he was featured on Monday Night Football or Monday Night Countdown last year. I think it was in the You Got Mossed segment of a beautiful, just went up over somebody, snatched the ball, and went into the end zone. It was very Randy Moss looking. Unbelievable player. He is an elite speedster. He is 6'3". He is honestly the typical Ole Miss style wide receiver, and somebody in this system would do very, very well. Whether it's Trinidad Chambliss, whether it's Deuce Knight, there's quarterbacks galore at Ole Miss, and you can get the ball to Darrell Gill Jr. Now, he had something like 33 catches. I could get the number a little bit wrong. I'm going off memory right now, for like 600 yards last season. And everybody's going to say, well, those numbers aren't that impressive. Why should we be excited about this football player with numbers like that? Well, remember, I think his name's Blake Angeli. He was the transfer quarterback that came in from Notre Dame to Syracuse, played like the first 4 or 5 games of the season, and he was a pretty good quarterback. He did pretty well. But after he went down, it went dire for Syracuse. Blake Angeli tore his Achilles, so he was done for the year. By the end of the year, they were starting a walk-on lacrosse player at quarterback. It's one of those situations to where I have not seen a quarterback situation this bad before. And that tells you a little bit of similarity from what they did before. Deshaun Stribling came from Oklahoma State. They had quarterback problems at Oklahoma State. Just did. Trey Wallace came from Penn State. They had quarterback problems at Penn State. So Ole Miss going in and finding quarterbacks or quarterbackless wide receivers that are very talented, that seems to be continuing. Darrell Gill Jr., super talented athlete. And we talked to the Florida football scout about him. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I forget the time on. But he said that a super fast guy, unbelievably talented guy, unbelievably bad luck of what he went through in the quarterback position this year. The year before, he was kind of crowded out of a wide receiver room. This year has been the Darrell Gill situation. If you look at his highlights on YouTube, it will kind of blow you away with what he can do. Super talented guy. You add him with the wide receiver that they got out of Kentucky, who was a freshman multiple years in the system, a slot-type wide receiver. You've already lost Winston Watkins, and you might end up losing Caden Lee. We'll see as this goes towards the end. You have your slot-type wide receiver with him and Dylan Alford to be a very effective unit. So wide receiver is a big deal for Ole Miss. Now, you get Darrell Gill, great. But somebody like Nick Anderson, who popped in, he was coached by Ole Miss's wide receiver coach, with LaDamian Washington at Oklahoma before he went to LSU. And Frank Wilson's on the staff. He knows him as well. Austin Thomas knows him as well. So anytime a player from LSU comes open, you need to at least pay attention. He might go somewhere else, but there's a chance that he could go there. And at Oklahoma, he was very good. Nobody was good on offense for LSU last year. Nobody. You cannot hold Nick Anderson that against him. You can't hold it against anybody on field. That offense was putrid a year ago. The defense, they tried. They spent like $25 million. They couldn't hold up. And that's how you get a 7-6 Texas Bowl runner-up team with that much money spent with the number one transfer portal class. People going to have all the hot takes. They're going to talk about how the transfer portal doesn't work, and that's proof of it. That's not the case. They just were awful offensively, and to the point where their defense just kind of let go of the rope. Just is what it is. So wide receiver-wise, Darrell Gill Jr., Nick Anderson, those guys, a player or two on that side of the ball will go a long way to determining where Ole Miss goes next season. You know, with our final segment, we have two more positions that we're talking about that's going to determine where Ole Miss will go in 2026. We will talk about that next. You know, one thing that is real interesting is we talked about the wide receiver position, and that is the position that people are freaking out, in large part because that's kind of the Pavlov's dog thing, where you're just kind of used to getting 7 wide receivers a year, and now that it's not happening, you're freaking out a little bit. Even though, what are we, halftime nearly about? We're approaching halftime if this was a football game. So we'll see as the transfer portal goes on a little bit later on in the month. One position that Ole Miss desperately, I will say desperately, they need players. Now, the offensive line this season, first in the SEC in sacks per game. A lot of that has to do with Trinidad getting the ball out of his hand quick. A lot of that has to do with his mobility, and a lot of that has to do with Patrick Kudus and other guys getting healthy. Period. But the way it's set up, Diego Pounds had a pretty good year. Jaden Williams had a pretty good year. They were really good players. So who was going to replace those guys? And both of those positions are money positions. And Ole Miss picked up an offensive lineman from LSU, a true freshman named Kern, and he is likely going to slot in at one of the tackles, whether it'll be the blind side or it will be the face side, likely. The other tackle position is interesting. And again, looking at the people that are already on campus at Ole Miss has people that they have been developing. I know that Ole Miss really likes Connor Halls and views him as a tackle. Is he somebody that plays right or left tackle? over the course of the season? I don't know. There's a couple of names that have popped into the transfer portal. Big offensive lineman, a freshman that went to high school with Ant Davis, got into the transfer portal coming out of Texas. That is something to monitor with what is going on. Again, Ole Miss is spending. We talked with Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, yesterday, and he's like, hey, you look at the defensive linemen that Ole Miss has, those are $1 million people on the defensive line. So that lets you know that Ole Miss is spending. So it's not a spending thing. We told you about the amounts that they may have been retaining players with and all of that. This is going to be an expensive football roster. It just is. So their ability or non-ability to pay for a tackle doesn't necessarily exist. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that plays out over the next 3 weeks. That will be one of the positions that I am watching for, that and wide receiver. If Ole Miss can settle that down, find somebody that can come in and start, not somebody that's just going to be earmarked to do it. Just find somebody that can come in and start. And if he wins that job, great. If he gets beat out, great, as long as they're good. And so we'll see exactly what that looks like. Now, the last position that Ole Miss needs to hit is linebacker. And we saw in the Fiesta Bowl about how it looks when your linebacker gets hurt. Like the second or third play of the game, Andrew Jones broke his foot. And Andrew Jones, for those who don't know, the first time Ole Miss played Georgia, Georgia kind of ran up and down the field on Ole Miss. It was the discovery with about 3 minutes left in that game of Andrew Jones that turned around this defense to the point where before the Georgia game, they had gotten 5 sacks and they had very few tackles for loss and all of that. After the Georgia game, after you inserted Andrew Jones into the lineup, all of a sudden you had 20 sacks during those 5 games and tackles for losses for days. A lot of that has to do with William Eccles kind of becoming a dude, but I digress. A lot of that has to do with Andrew Jones getting on the field consistently. Against South Carolina, he was very good. He was a very good player. So him and TJ Daugherty at least gave you a chance. TJ Daugherty and whoever else was beside him, Jaden Yates or Taj Chambers, you didn't necessarily have the chance. And you saw that in the Fiesta Bowl of Miami just running the ball down your throat. So Ole Miss got a linebacker from Baylor. I forget the name. It just slipped out of my head. Brain surgery moment. You're going to apologize. Take my apology on that. TJ Daugherty potentially is looking to get into the transfer portal maybe before Saturday. Again, Sunday can't get here quick enough because at least then you know what retention looks like. But linebacker is going to be key. You've got your athletes. You've got your Andrew Jones type guy that will make plays sideline to sideline. The Chris Pupal at linebacker. You have that guy. Now you need the alpha dog. You need to make sure you go out and find somebody that is going to make sure everything's all right. You need to make sure that you find somebody that wants to hit, a physical player. If you can do that, you will make this linebacker room pretty good. Again, I think Ole Miss needs to sign 2 or 3 linebackers the last 3 weeks. Now, last year that was problematic. Last year's defense period was problematic. Let's talk about that just a second, just before we get out of here today. They were very G5 heavy on defense last year. Jaden Yates, Taj Chambers, Wydett Williams, Kapina Gushikin, those guys on the outside. And what happened over the course of the season is they all kind of wore down a little bit. Not for anything that they could or couldn't do. You know, we joked about Kapina Gushikin. He played extremely hard, had a pick in the Fiesta Bowl. But on the field, he looked like he was 5'9", 170 pounds when everybody else looked 6'2", 220. And that is what you need to worry about in the portal. Size-speed ratio is everything. for this. Find somebody that is good. Find somebody with expectation. Find somebody with film that you can go off of. And then you hit the size speed ratio, bring them into your team, and you'll be pretty good. Again, the back part of the defense, you got Georgia safeties, Florida State safeties. You're going to be fine on the back end of the defense. You have Jay Crawford, who is an unbelievable corner. He can be a Trey Amos level corner. You got linebacker to get right. That's what you need to concentrate on over the last 2 weeks, last 3 weeks of January. Offensive line, you need a tackle. You need a tackle. You just do. You need wide receivers, at least one or two. And I gave you the names of 2 players that could potentially be there. That is all that is needed for this Ole Miss football team to compete for a national championship in 2026. We're not talking about going to the Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl or anything like that. We are talking about, even in a 9-game season, as difficult as this schedule is going to be, Ole Miss is going to be in a position to win their way into the playoffs and then make a run in the playoffs. That is what you need to pay attention to. That is everything that you need to pay attention to. All of the rumors that are happening, all the smoke that's out there, you need to just kind of set those aside and focus on this thing. Count on Walker Jones and all of those guys in retention, Austin Thomas, Pete Golding, all of that, since they're back on campus full-time now, since visits start tomorrow. I think you're in pretty good shape to see exactly how this goes. And I think you will see sharp tweets from Pete Golding very soon. Thanks for tuning in to today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to continue to talk about the transfer portal all week long, all the way through January, honestly. So make sure you subscribe and follow the show so you get all the episodes. We are on all the social channels, so check that out as well. And if you never miss an episode, the Average Dayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonolemmiss.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we're going to send you on over to the 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And audio, make sure you check out a second listen, maybe Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. Hotty toddy, everybody. We are just a couple of days away from this all being over, and we can just go into acquisition mode. And we are all looking forward to that. Hotty toddy, everybody.